Welcome to Psychological Explorations with Dr. Michael Axelman and Daniela. We focus on the core of the traumatic reaction and transformation through the perspective of Peter Levine and his wonderful book, Waking the Tiger, Healing Trauma. The innate capacity to transform overwhelming experiences. And he introduces in such a wonderful, rich way the importance of somatic approaches. A wonderful quote from the preface introduction of the book brings our attention to the inside. And I quote, "If you bring forth that which is within you, then that which is in you will be your salvation. If you do not bring forth that which is in you, then that which is in you will destroy you." The central theme of this book is about engaging the bodily processes that should have happened, allowing them to happen. Traumatic symptoms are not caused by the triggering event itself. They stem from the frozen residue of energy that has not been resolved and discharged. The residual energy does not simply go away. It persists in the body and often forces the formation of a wide variety of symptoms. For example, the impulse towards intense aggression is so frightening that the traumatized person often turns it inward on themselves rather than allow it external expression. Let's now move to the core traumatic reaction over time. We begin with hyperarousal, hypervigilance, mood swings, characterized by increased heart rate, increased breathing, agitation. And over time, this collection of symptoms transforms into panic attacks, an exaggerated startle response. The second key symptom is constriction, which alters person's muscular tone, posture, to allow more blood flow to muscles for defensive action. Over time, constriction leads to chronic fatigue, poor immune response. The third is dissociation, which is this flight from the body, seen as spaciness, being out to lunch, out of our bodies. And over time, it shows up as amnesia and forgetfulness. Finally, is the freeze response. We often think of the fight, flight, or freeze as kind of the traumatic triad in response to that event that can't be processed and integrated. Freezing motion, helplessness, being immobilized is real. Abject helplessness, paralysis so profound the person cannot move, speak, or feel. And over time, this transforms into depression, feelings of impending doom. Let's move now back to the body and look at the core traumatic reaction and the felt sense. We have a natural arousal cycle where we're challenged and then aroused, and the arousal peaks to meet the challenge, Arousal is brought down, leaving us relaxed. If we allow ourselves to acknowledge these thoughts and sensations using the felt sense and let them have their natural flow, they will peak and then begin to diminish and resolve. And I quote from Eugene Gendlin, who developed this notion of the felt sense and a whole approach to somatic psychotherapy called focusing. One of the true pioneers of somatic psychotherapy. And I quote, "A felt sense is an internal aura that encompasses everything you feel and know about the given subject at a given time, encompasses it and communicates it to you all at once, rather than detail by detail. Kind of as one big felt sense download, the whole thing comes." The problem of reenactments. We reenact and relive our traumas when we get sucked into the trauma vortex, thus opening the possibility for emotional flooding and re-traumatization. In avoiding the trauma vortex, we constrict and become phobic. We do not allow ourselves to experience the fullness of what we are inside or what there is outside. This split off whirlpool sucks away much of our energy. Dangers of catharsis and the importance of flexibility and spontaneity. Catharsis reinforces memory as an absolute truth and inadvertently reinforces the trauma vortex. The key to transforming trauma is to move slowly in the direction of flexibility and spontaneity. Transformation, a fundamental shift, takes place in our beings. The nervous system regains its capacity for self-regulation as it can integrate and transform the polarities of expansion and contraction. So the body goes into shutdown and then into the shakes and the tremors and the convulsions, and all of these in the physical and in the metaphorical have to be lived through and experienced as a peak cycle and then a resolving and then back to some form of orientation again. We must have the faith to trust responses and sensations that we can't fully understand, and a willingness to experience ourselves flowing in harmony with the primitive, natural laws that will take over and balance our seemingly incongruous perceptions. In closing, Levine closes with this reminder that we have 3 brains and 1 mind. The instinctual, the emotional, and the cognitive, the rational aspect. Very much in line with the Gurdjieff-Uspensky approach. And you can find more discussion on the 3 brains if you explore Maurice Nicoll and the presentations we've done on his psychological commentaries on Gurdjieff and Uspensky. In closing, our discussion on Peter Levine's approach somatically to addressing trauma And I quote, "To resolve trauma, we must learn to move fluidly between instinct, emotion, and rational thought. Herein lie the root of trauma, disconnection from the felt sense of belonging leaves our emotions floundering in a vacuum of loneliness. It leaves our rational minds to create fantasies based on disconnection rather than connection. In the process of healing trauma, we integrate our triune brains." Thank you for joining us once again at Psychological Explorations. Please come back for future presentations.